In the book of Luke that we read this morning, we read the account that no doubt many of us have read before. But before we started, there's a little prelude. See, any good author always gives the context for which they're writing, so that when you enter into the story, and you begin to read the account, you add an understanding of why the writer is writing. See, everybody has a motive. Everybody has a reason for writing. If you go to the bookstores, you see shelves and shelves of books. Everybody has a book these days. But because everybody has something that they want to say. Everyone has something that they want to relate, whether it's a creative story or a poem, or in this case we have narratives, where Luke tells us in the first 4 verses that even though other people have decided to write about what Jesus Christ did and all the things that happened, he takes pen to paper because he wants us to know. He's writing to Theophilus, and there's many theories as to who exactly this Theophilus was. But one thing that we do know is that the word Theophilus means a lover of God. And so Luke is writing to this lover of God to say, listen, there are some things that you need to know. For you've been preached to, you've been taught to, you've heard the stories. But let me add my witness so that you can know of a certain of the things that you've been taught. So in other words, all the things that you've heard, it's not just a story, it's not just a fable, but these things are true. And not only are they true, but they're there for you, to help you, to use. The Bible talks about the great cloud of witnesses. This book is not just a book for us to have some pleasurable bedtime reading, but it's there to be a witness to us. It's there to speak to us. It's there to teach us. And we can take the accounts, for sometimes we look at these characters, we look at the people of the Bible, and we think that they're so great and high and mighty. Sometimes we have this tendency to elevate them to hero status. But let me remind them that they're flesh and blood just like us. They're flesh and blood and had their issues and their trials just like we do. But yet many of them were men and women who made a decision that no matter what, I'm going to follow Christ. We've been learning in New Converse class. We've been speaking about Joseph, and we looked at Abraham and Jacob. And, at some point we started to elevate. We said, Abraham, my God, what faith. To be called the father of faith. What faith he must have had. But he was a man just like us. So that means if Abraham can have that kind of faith where he's willing to give his only son, that means I can have that kind of faith too. But it's a choice like we heard about this morning. It all comes down to a choice. The choice is ours. And oftentimes we make excuses. We say, well, I'm not like that. I didn't grow up in church. I don't have the pedigree. But this is not about pedigree. Because if it was pedigree, none of us should be here. None of us are born this. None of us deserve this. But yet the Lord wants us to know that there's yet a place for us. That verse, what he said to Cain, has been resonating in my mind all week. He said, if you do not good, shall you not be accepted? In other words, it doesn't matter what you've done up until this point. It doesn't matter what you've offered. We talked last week about specified use and about how our bodies were created for a specific use. But how many of us have used them and abused them and used them for something other than what they were meant. But the Lord says it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't. See, we talked about that but, that conjunction, the fact that it doesn't matter what comes before the but. But anything after means that I don't have to sit on that notion. I don't have to let what came first define me. But there's hope. Christ has come that we may have life and that we might have it more abundantly. So the option is there, but the choice is ours. And so Luke is writing to the people. He's writing to Theophilus, and he's writing to us this morning to let us know that, there's some things that you need to know. In order to know that this gospel that you've heard about, that you've been preached, he said in verse 3, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very beginning, from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent Theophilus, that thou mightest know the certainty of those things wherein thou hast been instructed. He's saying, I'm taking everything that I've learned and that I've gleaned and that I've heard from those who are eyewitnesses to what Jesus said and did. I'm taking everything and I'm putting them together for you in order so that you can know that of a certain everything is true. Because that means if it's true in this time, that means it's true for us. It means if Christ is able to walk on water and all these miracles that he did for the apostles and fill the apostles in the book of Acts, it means that he could do the same thing for us. And so he's saying, listen, you need to know what happened because you need to know that power is available to you. And as he starts his account, after his prelude and after Luke sets the context, he starts to tell us a story about Zacharias and Elizabeth. Now, clearly no one else thought really much of the two, of this couple, for this is the only real story that we get about this two. This is the only account that we see in the Bible. And it's not terribly detailed in terms of their family history or who they were. But there are certain things that we know about Zacharias and Elizabeth. We know that for Zacharias, he was a priest. That means that he had certain, the occupation or his job, if you will, was to be a priest. That means he had certain roles and responsibilities as a priest that he had to follow. And so the account goes on to tell him that he was of the course of Abiah, and that speaks to the tribe of where he came from, in the section of where he came from. And it tells us that his wife was the daughter of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. But the thing that really stands out about these two, and I'm not going to be long this morning, the thing that stands out about these two, it says in verse 6, and they were both righteous before God. Now, they weren't righteous before men. Because, you know, sometimes we have our own perception of who people are. We see people, we see the outside, we say, oh, well, that person is so righteous. They were in prayer meeting every week, and they're so holy. I wish I could be like this person. But it didn't say that they were righteous before men. But it said they were righteous before God. And you know, if God calls you righteous, all right, then now we're getting to the point. You see, sometimes God doesn't even tell us who we are. Because sometimes we see ourselves. When we start to see ourselves. We heard the lesson this morning in Sunday school was about pride. Sometimes if we were to know that God called us righteous, and we'd see ourselves, we're like, oh, well, you know, I must be doing something right. See, if you have to, I was talking to someone about humility, and if you can recognize that you are humble, then you're no longer humble. Because now you're starting to see yourself. You're starting to see yourself. You're saying, oh, well, I've gotten to a certain place. None of us have gotten anywhere by our own. We've come this far by faith because we've leaned on the Lord. And the only way for us to get beyond and to get to a place where we desire to go is to continue to lean on Him. But the Bible tells us that both Zacharias and Elizabeth were righteous before God. But I love the Bible because it always defines itself. Just in case we didn't know what righteousness meant, it tells us. It said they walked in all. Everyone say all. All. They walked in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. Now when you start to, every word in the Bible is important. And sometimes we get in the habit, we read, but sometimes we need to stop and to meditate and to sit on the word. Yes. The Bible says that they walked before the Lord. They walked in all the commandments. Not some of them, not the things that were convenient for them. But they walked in all the commandments and the ordinances of the Lord. But they did so blamelessly. The word blameless is an adjective describing the innocence of wrongdoing or dishonest behavior. So not only did Zacharias walk in the commandments and the requirements of the Lord, but they did so blamelessly. They did so without being innocent of wrongdoing, without any dishonest behavior. In other words, they didn't have any ulterior motives. They weren't serving the Lord because they wanted something from Him. Because when you serve the Lord because you want something from Him, when you don't get what you want, there ends your serving. Some people come to church because they're looking for something. They want to get something. They want to receive something. And that's okay as long as you don't stay for that reason. Because as long as your motive is anything else but to serve the Lord with a perfect heart, then as soon as you don't receive what it is that you think you ought to receive, then you're gone. But the problem is the Lord doesn't owe us anything. What we have of the Lord is by grace. It's because He loves us. It's not because we've earned it. The Bible calls grace unmerited favor. And that's exactly what it is. To merit something means you've earned it or you've done something to be worthy to receive it. But the unfavor that we have of God is unmerited, which means we've done absolutely nothing to receive it. Even the very breath that we breathe, as I said earlier, sometimes we take the presence of the Lord for granted. We take the fact that we have life. We take the fact that we're in a sound mind. We take it for granted. But it is a gift. Had the Lord not given it to us, we wouldn't have it. We can cry and scream and do whatever we want, but if we don't receive of the Lord, then we don't have anything. Everything that we have is of Him. And sometimes we take even our finances, we take it as ours, and sometimes we hold on to our finances because I don't want to get rid of this. But the Lord said, it's mine. A cattle on 1,000 hills is mine. And sometimes He blesses, or not sometimes, He blesses us so that we can be a blessing to others. And we need to ask the Lord, I don't know why I threw that in there, but as the Lord leads, You know, we need to give of ourselves. And it's not just of our finances, but our time. Everything that we have is from the Lord. And it's not for us to use for our own desire. It's not for us to use for what we think it should be used for, but it's for us to manage. The Bible calls us stewards, and we ought to be good stewards of everything that we've been given. See, a steward is just a manager. When you go to the store and you see the person with the big name tag that says, I'm the manager, they don't own what's in the store. But they've been entrusted a responsibility to take it and to use what's there and to use it for a specific purpose. You know, our manager that we have at work, her job is to make sure that she uses the resources and the monies and the people and the time effectively so that the work that her boss has given her to do can be accomplished. Well, our boss in the Spirit has given us a job to do, and it's to rescue the perishing, to care for the dying. It's to reach out to others who are in need. And we as managers have a responsibility to take all that He's given us and to use it for that purpose. So when we see Elizabeth and Zacharias, we see what the Bible tells about us. It tells us that they walked in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. In other words, they didn't do it for any ulterior motive. But they did it because they loved the Lord. They did it because they were being obedient, and that's what they ought to have done. Now, when we talk about walking, and like we said, sometimes we skip over words in the Bible. When we talk about walking, Noah defines the verb to walk as to move along on foot, to advance by steps, to go on at a moderate pace without lifting one foot entirely before the other touches the ground, to be in motion, to act, to move, to behave, or to pursue a course of life, to conduct oneself. In other words, what the Bible is telling us is that Elizabeth and Zacharias continued to move along. They advanced step by step in all the commandments and ordinances that the Lord had given them. They continued at a steadfast motion, but they continued to act and to pursue the course of life that the Lord had established. See, sometimes we pursue a course of life that's other than what the Lord established. You know, we talked about it last week about how, you know, I had the plan. You know, we all have one at some point where we had a plan of everything that we want to do, everything that we want to accomplish in life. We have the things that we desire to do in our life. But the Lord has a greater plan for us than we have for ourselves. And what He's calling for us is to abandon our plans, abandon our desires, and to walk, to move consistently in the manner that He has given us to walk. He's calling us to abandon all else and to walk in all the commandments, or to steadfastly move forward in everything that He's given us to do. He's not asking us to sprint to the finish line, but He's asking us to be consistent. See, there's something about walking. When you walk, you're walking at a steady pace. I don't know if any of you used to run, but I used to run cross country and wasn't very good at it at all. And I remember my first race. I was so excited. I got to the finish line, or the starting line rather, and I'm there, you know, right up front, ready to take off. And took off I did. So when the gun went off, I took off. And I was running hard, I was breathing hard, and I was going and going. And then, you know, I was doing pretty well for the first, I don't know, 10 seconds or, you know, for the first little bit. But then I hit that wall. And I started to slow down, and then my legs started to get heavy, and I started to crawl. I literally crawled across the finish line. Why? Because I expended all my energy in the beginning. I expended everything that I had, and I tried, and my goal was to get out before everybody, to be first the whole way so I could come across the finish line, and that was my goal. But because I expended everything that I had, I almost didn't make it across the finish line. Sometimes when we're walking with the Lord, or we're in this walk, we try to get ahead of God. We try to pour everything, and we give of ourselves completely, but yet we don't listen to what the Lord is telling us. You see, the Lord knows the pace. If you ever see in a good race, you have some, especially when you get to the Olympic levels, they have the pace setter. The pace setter, they're there strategically to be in the race, to set the pace. Say, if you want to get to this finish line at a certain point, then here you need to follow this person. You need to follow this person who's setting the pace. Because, see, that person doesn't stay in the whole race. But they're there for a purpose. They're there to set the pace. So that you know, okay, if I want to make it, this is what I need to do. This is at the speed I need to go. The Lord has set the pace for us. But our problem is sometimes we try to get ahead of the Lord. We try to race ahead of Him, and we end up faltering and hitting that wall in the spirit. We get to a place where we feel so dry, and we've got nothing. Why? Because we, just like I did in my foolishness or my naivete, we give everything that we have, and we don't listen to what the Lord is saying.